So we're continuing with this Agadita here on Pei Zayin and Beis, about 15 or maybe 20 lines up from the bottom. And we're up to Rab Yochanan. The first word in the line is Korin. Kurin, I should say, not Korin. Kurin. Rab Yochanan Mishum Rab Shimon ben Yochai. My dichsiv, a poskim mishlei, al talshen eved el adonov pen yikalecha v'ashamti. Do not slander a slave to his master, lest he curse you and you will be found guilty. So this pasuk in Mishlei means al timsar din al adam litok olav lashem cherashahu. So again, even though the literal translation is not to slander a slave to his master because he might curse you, but he's saying in general, al timsar din al adam. The slave here is just a metaphor. Don't cry out against someone in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he is a Rasha and he should be judged as a Rasha, because that will bring upon you his klola. Uksiv, and in the very next pasuk, it says, Dar aviv yikalel, a generation that curses its father, ves imo lo yivarech, and does not bless its mother. So it's mashma from this pasuk that the reason why you should not slander your slave to his master is because of this dar aviv yikalel. So the Gemara right away asks, this is Rabbi Yochanan's question in the name of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, mishum the aviv yikalel ves imo lo yivarech. In other words, is it logical that because the generation curses its father and does not bless its mother, therefore al-talshin means you should not slander? What's the connection here? Ella, here's the way we have to interpret it. Afilu dar shel rishoyim she'aviv yikalel ves imo lo yivarech. So even a generation of evildoers that curse their father, doesn't even bless his mother, and it's a strange choice of a sin to focus on a generation of sinners, the chet of Kibbud Av. So the Ben Yoda says that Ikar al Limud Schus Shahaylo She'al Lomar Yisrael. It means Yisrael Afal Piche Chatu Nikroim Bonim, and of Shemochal Kvodo Kvodo Mochal. So therefore, if the Chet was Kibbud Av, you might say that we should not be Malamid Schus, so that the father will be Mochel his son, because they're being Mizalzel B'Kibbud Av. And that's why the Pasuk says that Afim Chatu B'Kibbud Av Ein Lahalshin Alehem. We should still not slander them. Al talchin eved el adonov. Uminolan, and from whom do we derive this limud? Me'Hoshea. That Hosea was punished because he said that Hashem should punish Israel. And even though they were Shoyim, he shouldn't have said so. When God accused Israel of sinning, Hosea suggested that God exchanged them for a different nation, and Hosea was punished by being told to marry an unfaithful woman. Now, we said before in the name of Rabbi Eliezer that the reason why Hashem sent the people into exile is to bring Gerim. So the Gemara now has another drasha about Gerus, about exile. Omer Rav Hoshaya. My dechsiv, what does it mean in Pasuk Shoftim? Sidkos pirzono b'Yisrael. They will recount the righteous deeds God performed for his open cities. Pizronos means Ori Prozos, in Israel. The verse is from the song of praise to God sung by Dvorah and Barak upon the miraculous victory of the army of Sisera. According to its plain meaning, the verse predicts that the people will thank God for being able to live securely in unwalled cities of Israel. Stoka Asa Kodesh Baruch Hu b'Yisrael shepizron lebeino umos. In other words, it's a great act of righteousness on God's part that instead of putting them all in one country in exile, b'makom echad, they would be mefuzarim, they would be scattered amongst the nations. And thereby ensuring that the Goyim would be unable to destroy all the Jews at the same time. This is based on the word pizrono in the pasuk. Vahainu, and this is the response that Rav Oshia gave to one of those minim, some sort of an apostate, probably one of the early karoim. The Amalei Lahu Mina, that min said to Rabbi Chanina, Anan ma'alinan minaychu, we are superior to you. Ksiv b'chu, regarding you, it says in Pasuk Malachim, after the battle of David with Edom, Ki sheshes chadoshim yoshav sham Yoav chol Yisrael ad shehichris kol zachar b'Edom. That in 6 months alone, that the Jewish people settled in Edom, hargu mehem es kol hazcharim. For 6 months he strayed there until he had destroyed all the males in Edom. This took place in the context of the war mentioned in Shmuel Beis, fought by Yoav, who was the Sar Tzava of David's army, against Edom. These Edomites were descended from Amalek, the oppressors of Israel throughout history, whose annihilation is mandated by the Torah at the end of Parshas Ki Teitzei. And the apostate's analogy is not really valid, since the Edomites, the Amalekites, were longtime foes of the Jews and had attacked them many times. Nevertheless, he was given a response based on his own very premise, namely that this was a massacre of innocent people. Vilu anan. But as for us, that's what this min is claiming, is simchu gaban kamat shani v'lokav dina l'chumidi. You're living amongst us for many years, and we don't touch you. Omar lo, Sir Kanina responds to this min. B'rtzoncha shi tafel lecha Talmud Chacham. Do you want a Talmud Chacham to deal with you? Nitfalei Rabbi Oshia. So Rabbi Oshia decided that he would deal with this min, which means to counter his argument. Amalei. Rabbi Oshia says to the min, you know why you don't touch us? That's not because you're better. Mishum deloyad isu hechi tavd. You don't know how to perpetrate evil against us. Why? Tichalinu kulhu. If you want to destroy all of Israel, that you can't do, the lesnu gabaychu, because we're spread out throughout the world. And my deika gabaychu, if you want to only destroy the Jewish people who are here locally in your vicinity, you don't want to do that. Why? Kari lechu malchusa ktiasa. Let's see the translation of this. You will then be called a genocidal government. Through the efforts of the Jews who survived in other countries, your reputation will be tarnished. Yikru lachem malchus k'tua shenechsa mimena chelek mibnei hamalchus. Okay, so the Hebrew translation here is not the same as the English translation. The English translation says you'll be called a genocidal government. But the Hebrew translation says that nechsar mimeno chelek mibnei malchus. Omalei. So the min responds to Rabbi Yoshia, Gapa dromoi, by the wall of the Romans. That's a pagan deity. So these were the early pagans. I said they were Karaim. This is even earlier than the Karaim. And he refers to this pagan deity as a wall because of its protective powers in their belief. With this thought we go down, and with this thought we go up. B'machshava zu on yordim v'olim. Klomar, shetamid anu asukim b'machshava zu she'anu rotzim lechalosam v'einanu osim kein machmas hatam she'amarta. That in truth we want to destroy the Jewish people, but we are inhibited to do so because of the reason that you gave, either that will be called a genocidal government, or as the Hebrew translation has it, that will be called a malchus k'tua shenechsar mimena chelek mibnei hamalchus. Maybe it also means the same thing, that its own citizens will be destroyed. Tani Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Chia taught in a brayso. What does it mean when it says in the Torah, in Eov, Elohim heven darka v'hu yada es mekoma? God understood her way, and he knew her place. And this is a reference to the Torah. God understood the environment for the Torah and for its students. Yodea Kodesh Baruch Hu es Yisrael she'edem yichom lekabel gzeros atzorios shel Edom. Shem gozim shmad al Yisrael shelo yasku b'Torah v'lo yikaymu ha'mitzvos is lefichach higla osam leBavel. He exiled them to Bavel. They're not cruel. That relatively is, they're not as cruel as other nations. In Babylonia, the Jews would be able to establish an environment conducive to the study of Torah. The Babylonian community was never subjugated by Rome, Edom, although the Roman Empire extended over Eretz Yisrael towards the end of the Second Temple epoch, did not reach Babylonia. Thus, by exiling the Jews to Babylonia at the end of the First Temple, God ensured that a community capable of ensuring Jewish continuity would be spared the Roman persecution. Although, as stated, the Jews were scattered among several nations, they were exiled primarily to Babylonia. The Gemara above speaks of the exile following the destruction of the Second Temple, and this brisa refers to the exile to Babylonia at the end of the First Temple. The Gemara in Gittin states that the Jews were treated benignly in Babylonia only during the era in which that country was ruled by the Chaldonian kings, Nebuchadnezzar, Evil, Merodach, and Belshazzar. At a later time, when Babylonia was under Persian rules, the Jews were oppressed. The Persians wrested control of Babylonia from the Chaldeans in the year 3389, 51 years after the destruction of the First Temple, when Cyrus defeated Belshazzar. According to Tosfos, Jews were treated well in Babylonia until a certain people known as the Chaborim came in the Amoraic times and corrupted the Persians already living there. The Amar Abulazalo Higla HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael Bavel Nature Amuka Kishaol. Babylonia is deep like Shaol. It's situated in a low-lying area in the lower Euphrates Valley. Shaol is sometimes translated as the grave or as Gehenna. So their presence in Shaol would serve to hasten the redemption. Enemar miyad Shaol efdem mimoves egolem. From the clutches of Shaol I will ransom them. From death I will redeem them. Hivtiach HaKadosh Baruch Hu sheyifta osa mimokum shu amok kishaol shenemar miyad Shaol efdem mimoves egolem. Ein Yisrael the golem el mitoch tzara gedola v'amuka kishaol. V'asi manu Hashem chesed l'kaim imanu pasuk zeh v'meshehiglo sanu lebavel shiamuka kishaol. Reb Chanina Amar, the reason why we were sent in exile to Bavel is mipnei shekarov l'shonam l'lashon Torah. Their Aramaic language is similar to our Torah, and therefore we will not forget the Torah. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, why were we sent to Babel Mipnei? Sheshigron lebeis imon. They were being sent, the people of Israel, back to the house of their mother, meaning their ancestors. Because Avraham Avinu, when he came out of Ur Kasdim, where he was born, his birthplace was in Bavel. Mashal li'adam shekas al ishto lehechan mishagul lebeis ima. If you get angry at your wife, you send her back packing to her mother's house. So to Yisrael, when they angered HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he sent her to Bavel, which is their mother's house. That's where Avraham Avinu came from. Vahainu, and this we see from the words of the Rabbi Alexandri, the Amash Locha Chazu Limata Asan. 3 went back and returned to their original source. V'eluhem, Yisrael, Kesef Mitzrayim, Uksav Haluchos. Okay, 3 went back to its source. Yisrael, we know, Hainu Tamar, and that's what we saw in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that they went back to Bavel, which is base Imon. Kesef Mitzrayim, the possessions of the Mitzrayim, which were taken in the booty after Yitzis Mitzrayim, they returned to their source. The Ksiv Pasuk Malachim says, "Vayibat Shanach Hamishis Melech Rechavam Allah Shishak Melech Mitzrayim al Yerushalayim." And then the pasuk says, "Vayikach es otzos beis Hashem es otzos beis Hamelech es hakol lokach." The wealth of Egypt returns to its source, as is written. And it was in the 5th year of the reign of King Rechavam that Shishak, the king of Egypt, ascended against Yerushalayim. And he says that immediately afterwards, it says he took away the treasures of the temple of Hashem, the treasures of the king's palace. He took everything. And finally, Ksav Haluchos. Okay, that's the 3rd thing that went back to its source. Tichsiv, it says with regard to the breaking of the luchos, V'ashabrem li'einechem. I will break them in front of your eyes. This is a pasuk in Dvarim Perek Tes with regard to Shrius Haluchos. And Tana, we learned to the Rice Haluchos Nishbaru v'Otzios Parchos. That when it says Le'einechem, it means that the letters that were inscribed on the tablets flew in front of their eyes. Shahayisham Dover Pele. This was a wondrous thing that happened. Ha'ayin Pona Listakel Olaf. Everybody should turn around and look at what's going on. Sharei Chazar Haksav Limakoro. So Osios Parchos means that the letters flew in the air, but then they returned to the Luchos. And this was Nes B'toch Nes. Osios Hoyu Charusos Beluchos. They were engraved in the tablets. Lo Hoyu B'hem Mamish. There was just air. She'af Shelo Hoyu B'hem Mamish Parchu B'Yavir. It's amazing that air, which has no substance to it, was floating in front of the eyes of Israel. That's called a Nes betoch nes. 59, he says here in the note that the word le'nechem, before your eyes, is interpreted as signifying that something wondrous happened. All eyes turn to it. And we don't understand the pasuk literally because it would have been impossible for everyone to view the actual breaking of the luchos. But what's le'nechem, before your eyes? It refers to the phenomenon of the letters soaring upwards, which was indeed visible to all. Now, the letters were carved all the way through the tablets and hence were actually comprised only of air. It was a miracle that the letters could be seen. So it means here not that the letters returned to the luchos, but rather to the mokar. I think it means back to Shamayim. Ula Omar, the reason why the people of Israel were sent to Bavel, Kedecha Yochlu. Here we're going to turn to Peches. Morim, they should be able to satiate themselves with dates because apparently there are many date trees, palm trees in Bavel with a lot of dates. Trudim biparnasasam, and therefore v'yasku b'torah. So the abundance of dates was enough to satiate them, and therefore they could occupy themselves with the study of Torah. Dates satiate, they warm the body, they loosen the bowels, and provide energy. That's Gemara Ksubis and in Gittin. I think we saw something similar in Masechet Shabbos. Ula ikla from Padisa. Ula came to Padisa. Krivule. They brought him a basket of dates. Trina de Tamre. Amar lahu. He asked them, Kama kihani bezuza. How many of these can sell for a zuz? Amrule tlas bezuza. 3 for a zuz. Amar. And he asked them, Milot sana de duvsha bezuza? A basket of honey, meaning date honey, sells for only a zuz? And he says, according to our version, apparently the different Gersos, Ula sought to know how many basketfuls of dates sell for a zuz. And they told him 3 basketfuls. And Ula remarked that a basketful of honey costs 1 zuz, because 3 basketfuls of dates produce 1 basketful of honey. So again, how many basketfuls of dates sell for a zuz? 1 zuz, you buy 3 basketfuls. So Ula then remarked that a basketful of honey costs 1 zuz, because 3 basketful of dates produce 1 basketful of honey. Okay, ubavloi lo aski baraisa. Okay, that's already something else. So let's just see. Ula iklol from Pedisa. Krevule tiryana de tamri. They brought him a basket full of dates. Amalahu. He asked them, Kama salim ka'elu nimkarim bezuz echad. Amalei tlas. Tlas bezuza. You could buy 3 basketfuls for 1 zuz. Omar. Milot sana de duvsha bezuzi. A sal that is full of tmorim, that makes dvash, is sold in Bavel for 1 zuz. They said it was Shlosha Salim Nimkar Bezuz. Ratzalomar Shatmar Mitzuyim Bebavel Bezol. I'm confused here because Pumpadisa is in Bavel. Ah, I see. I think what's happening here is that Ula came from Eretz Yisrael. Is that possible? Ah, doesn't say where he came from. Anyway, he came to Bavel from someplace. I'd like to believe he came from Eretz Yisrael, but I'm not sure. And he found out that you could buy 3 salims worth of Vash Tmorim at 1 zuz. So Tlas Bezuza, he says you can buy a sal moli Tmorim and make honey out of it and buy it in Bavel for 1 zuz. So obviously it's a very plentiful country with great resources. Ubavloi loaski doraisa. In other words, if you are so well supported, the economy is so good, then you could dedicate yourself exclusively to the study of Torah, because you can buy yourself that which will satiate yourself for a pittance. Now, afterwards, Belela Tiaru, he ate these tmarim, and it says here he had chilshul. Omar, he declared, Melot Sana Sama de Motza Bezuza Bebavel, Sal Moli Sam Hamavis Nimkar Bebavel Bezuzecha. Says that because it's so cheap, therefore people eat so many of them, and at the end they get chilchul from them. Ubavloi Aski Bo Raisa, and nevertheless, the Bnei Bavel are dedicated to the study of Torah, even though they find it difficult for the gastro system to eat the tomorrow. So now I guess he's turning it around to a compliment. That's the impression I'm getting. Dates were so expensive. Ula presumed that people ate many of them, and they suffered these adverse laxative effects. Ula marveled at their ability to study Torah. In other words, Ula had made a point that they could study Torah constantly without devoting their time to earning a living, because they had such an abundance of inexpensive food. But now he's saying that I marvel at their ability to study at all, because the adverse effects of these dates. So the Eitz Yosef explains that the dates were the only cheap food in Babylonia, otherwise foods were expensive. The Babylonians consequently had to work hard to afford a healthy diet. And yet they still found time to study Torah. V'amar Rabbi Lazar, my dechsiv. What are we going to do with the pasuk in Yeshayahu Hanavi? V'holchu amim rabim, many peoples will go. V'amru, and they will say, Lechu v'nale el har Hashem el beis Hashem, beis Elokei Yaakov, come let us go up to the mountain of Hashem, to the house of God of Jacob. Why does the verse focus in on the house of Jacob? Okay, Yaakov, okay, Avram, v'Yitzchak, Elolo Avram Chakosabo Har. Avram's relationship to Torah was that of a person looking at a mountain. Shenemar Asher Yamar Yom Har Hashem Yira'eh. And Avram Avinu bound his son Yitzchak on the mountain where the temple was destined to be built. And the pasuk means that the future generations will declare, on this mountain God appears to his people. V'lo ki Yitzchak shekasav bo sudden. Not like Yitzchak, concerning which it says a field. Yitzchak lasuach basod eliki Yaakov shekrao bayis. Yaakov called the house of Hashem a bayis, a house, a home. The Nemar vayikra es shema makomahu beis el. So Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, each one of them prayed on the Temple Mount, but each one perceived it differently. Only Yaakov saw it as a house. Avram's mountain, according to Marsha, represents the first temple, and the Shekhinah watched over the temple like a guard strategically stationed on top of a mountain. However, this protection was not permanent, because the first temple was destroyed. The field of Yitzchak signifies the second, which merited an even lesser degree of divine presence. And many of the miracles that took place in the first temple did not reoccur in the second. The house of Jacob symbolized the third temple, which will enjoy divine protection as permanent and complete. And this pasuk, Vayikras Shema Makoma Hu Beis El, is indicating that Yaakov called it a bias, and the pasuk in Yeshaya that we started with, which says Holcha Amim Rabim Yom Lechuv Al Har Hashem El Beis Elokei Yaakov, that's a reference to the third Beis Hamikdash. Rabbi Yochanan Gadol Kibbutz Golios Kiyom Shenivru Bo Shamayim V'Aretz. The day of Kibbutz Golios will be as momentous as the day of creation. Shenemar, as the pasuk says in Hosea, it says V'nikvetzu b'nei Yehuda u'b'nei Yisrael Yaakov v'samu lahem rosh echad v'ol min ha'aretz ki gadol yom Yisrael. The children of Yehuda and the children of Israel will be assembled together. They will appoint for themselves one leader and ascend from the land. For the day of the ingathering is great. Uksiv, and similarly, it says Vayerev Vayvoker Yom Echad. So the verse from Hosea referring to the final Geula as a great day, it says Yom Gadol. And this alludes to another great day, the day when heaven and earth were created. The material of the heaven and earth and all they contain was created Yesh Me'ayin on the first of the 6 days of creation. And that's why that day is called the day that heaven and earth were created. On the other days, the material was merely shaped and set into place. He says here, and with this we'll conclude, that Tirgumu, the Targum of Gadol Yom Yisrael, Yom Knishon, Yom Knisasam, or Kinusam, Shal Yisrael Me'agolos. So that's called Yom Yisrael, Gadol Yom Yisrael. Uksiv, and with regard to creation of heaven and earth, it says, Vayerev Vayvoker Yom Echad. Harei Shekora Pasuk Yom Kibbutz Golios Yom Yisrael. Moshe Nikra Yom Brias HaShamayim Va'aretz Yom Echad. And he says here in the recording of this Eitz Yosef here, that Eitz Avram Vinu Nemar Har V'Sad. That's referring to the Zman of Churma. With regard to Yaakov, he called it Bayis Al Shem Ha'asid Libanos, that in the future it will be rebuilt. And therefore the Novi says that Asid Libanos Beis Hamikdash K'mo Shevtiach Yaakov V'Kor Beis El Al Shem HaBinyan Sha'asid Libanos. So that God's promise for the future through this prophecy of Holchu Amim, etc., in Yeshaya, is based on the fact that Yaakov already predicted and was promised by Shem that this Beis El would be rebuilt at the end of time. And the Yaakov writes that this is a makom she'eno roi afil lizriya. That Har is a reference to a place that you cannot plant. Sada is very plantable. And Bayis is the best because it's a makom yeshiva bekeva. And these three names parallel the three mikdashos as we discussed earlier in the name of the Marsha. And the Eitz Yosef writes that with regard to Avram and Yitzchak, the Gemara doesn't say shekaru ella Shekasuv bo, because the pasuk Asher Yomar Hayom is not the words of Avram Avinu, but rather the Torah is saying so. And Yitzchak also didn't call it a Sada. The Torah writes that Yitzchak went out Lasuach Lasada. The Marsha is bothered that in many places it says the word Yom, and yet we don't say that it's, it's Gadol, it's as great as the day of Brias Shamayim V'aretz. So he says that this drasha is that the Brias HaOlam, we find that on the first day of Yetzirah, it says Yom Echad. It doesn't say Yom Rishon on the first day, like as it says on other days. And the reason for that is Yom Rishon, everything was created Yesh Me Ayin, and in other days, everything was established on its place. Nikva kol davar al makom mishum maloso. And since this great day, maloso, it's called Yom Echad, to teach us that it's Yom Miyuchad. Shebo haya Hashem Echad ushmo Echad. And so too on the day of Kibbutz Golios, it says Rosh Echad. And the word Echad is the superfluous redundant word because it says Rosh. And we know that it's Rosh Echad. But it's coming to darshan that the Yom Miyuchad b'mayla ki Yom Bria Shamayim V'aretz. That af b'Yom Kibbutz Golios you have Peleg Gadol, he calls it. Ilu Yeh Brias Yesh Me Ayin. And in the Ein Yisrael he writes that these two psukim, where the word Yom are not to be understood, and with regard to Kibbutz Golios, we could say Gadol Yisrael, and it means the nevuah of the Geula of Vizarosel Li Ba'aretz, and that's equivalent to the Yom of Bria Shemayim Ba'aretz. Okay, then Rabbosai, this is where we're going to stop. So tomorrow we begin with Yosem Sheshachto Olav Apetropsin.